Lauren Giddings was born on April 18, 1984, in Tacoma Park, Maryland. She grew up in a loving family, with caring parents and two younger sisters she was especially close to. From a young age, Lauren had a deep faith and a strong desire to help others. That's why she chose to become a public defender, someone who stands up for people who can't afford a lawyer. To make that dream a reality, she enrolled at Mercer University and moved to Macon, Georgia. Lauren excelled in her studies and even became president of Mercer's chapter of the Federalist Society. She later landed an internship at a law firm in Atlanta, where she met a man named David, and the two soon started dating. After she returned to Macon, they kept their relationship going long distance and planned to get married once Lauren finished law school. In the summer of 2011, when Lauren was 27, she finally graduated. But there was still one big milestone ahead: the bar exam. She spent weeks preparing for it, taking a short break only to attend her younger sister's wedding back home in Maryland. After the celebration, she returned to Georgia and joined her classmates for a small end-of-year party. Not long after that, she told her friends and family she was going to spend the next few days completely focused on studying and asked them not to disturb her. From that moment on, no one heard from Lauren. At first, her friends and family assumed she was just busy preparing for the exam. But a few days later, on June 29th, her sister started to worry. She was on her honeymoon at the time and had been sending her photos from the trip, but Lauren hadn't opened a single message. Her sister knew Lauren was focused on studying, but the fact that she hadn't even read the messages for days felt unsettling. Worried, she reached out to one of Lauren's friends and asked her to check if everything was okay. The friend tried calling first, but the calls went straight to voicemail. So, she and her boyfriend decided to drive over to Lauren's apartment, a small student housing complex right across from the university. The first thing they noticed was that Lauren's car was still parked outside, but when they knocked, no one answered. Her friend had a spare key, so after a moment's hesitation, she decided to let herself in. Inside, the place was a mess. But that wasn't necessarily alarming. Lauren was supposed to move in with her boyfriend David the very next day, so there were bags and suitcases scattered everywhere. But Lauren herself was nowhere to be found. On the other hand, her purse, phone, even laptop was still there. None of it made any sense. Where could she have gone, leaving behind all of her things, and even her car? The friends started calling around, reaching out to people who knew Lauren, and soon, several of them joined the search. They combed the university grounds and nearby streets, but there was no sign of her. They also learned that no one had seen or spoken to Lauren for days. When her family found out what was happening, they drove from Maryland to Georgia to help. Meanwhile, her friends kept searching through the night, but when morning came and there was still no trace of her, they finally decided to call the police. Officers arrived at the apartment complex and searched Lauren's unit, but they didn't find any signs of forced entry or a struggle. Still, her sudden disappearance seemed deeply suspicious, so they called in forensic specialists to process the scene. The team began spraying luminol around the apartment, looking for traces of blood. At first, nothing unusual showed up, but the moment they reached the bathroom, the luminol lit up almost the entire tub. It was clear that a large amount of blood had been cleaned up there. From that point on, detectives feared the worst. It was just too much blood for anyone to still be alive, so investigators quickly shifted their focus to finding Lauren's body. While officers were standing outside, one of them caught a strong, foul odor, one he instantly recognized as the smell of decomposition. Following the scent, he walked toward the apartment complex's dumpsters. The closer he got, the stronger the stench became, and when he finally lifted the lid on one of them, he saw a large black garbage bag, and inside that bag was a woman's torso. Although the victim's identity couldn't be confirmed visually, since her head was missing, detectives were almost certain it was Lauren. Still, they decided to keep the discovery quiet for the moment, not wanting to jeopardize the investigation. It's worth noting that finding the remains was pure luck. The officer had arrived at the complex just minutes before the garbage truck was scheduled to pick up the trash, and they'd parked their cars in a way that blocked the truck from entering. If not for that small coincidence, the body would have been taken to the landfill and most likely never found. As detectives waited for confirmation of the victim's identity and tried to figure out their next steps, they learned something that immediately caught their attention. Lauren's friends and family told them she'd been complaining for weeks about strange things happening in her apartment. She said that sometimes, when she came home, it felt like someone had moved her belongings around. But there were no signs of a break-in, and the door was always locked. This had been going on for quite a while, to the point where Lauren started wondering if she was losing her mind. On top of that, she sometimes felt like someone was watching her, though she never actually saw anyone. Growing increasingly uneasy, she even bought a door security bar to brace the door from the inside. But the strange things didn't stop. Shortly before she disappeared, Lauren had told her boyfriend about it. He tried to calm her down, suggesting it was probably just some pranksters fooling around and that she had nothing to worry about. Police quickly looked into her boyfriend David and found that he'd been out of state during the time of the murder. There was no way he could have done it, so they ruled him out almost immediately. Meanwhile, forensic investigators combed through Lauren's apartment, looking for fingerprints or any other trace evidence. But it looked as if someone had done a meticulous cleaning job. Every surface seemed freshly wiped down with cleaning products. In hopes of finding something, they decided to remove the entire bathtub and send it to the lab for DNA testing. Not long after, medical examiners confirmed that the torso found in the dumpster was indeed Lauren's, officially turning the case into a homicide. They estimated that she'd been killed around June 26th, roughly 3 days before her friends and family started looking for her. However, the exact cause of death couldn't be determined, and there were no signs of sexual assault. Despite detectives' efforts to keep the investigation under wraps, the sudden police activity drew attention from reporters. Soon, journalists were gathering outside the apartment complex, filming news segments and spreading rumors that the police had found a body, even though, officially, no one had confirmed that yet. Detectives decided to question everyone living in the complex and check their apartments, just in case the killer was someone who lived right next door. All of the residents, who were also Mercer law students, immediately agreed to let the police in without a warrant. All except one, 25-year-old Stephen McDaniel. Stephen lived right next door to Lauren, but he flat out refused to let officers into his apartment. He told them that, as a law student, he strongly believed in protecting his privacy and that he had nothing to hide. Naturally, that raised a lot of red flags for investigators. They started looking into him and quickly learned that Stephen had actually been helping with the search for Lauren the previous day and that he'd even given an interview to reporters earlier that morning. He wasn't just some random neighbor. He'd been her classmate, a fellow law student, and even served as vice president of the same student law society where Lauren was president. So yes, he knew her very well, but for some reason, he was refusing to let police see his apartment. And yet, he stayed right in the middle of everything happening around the complex, hovering near officers, chatting with other residents, and talking to journalists. During the interview, Stephen told reporters how he and a few of Lauren's friends had gone into her apartment and searched the neighborhood, trying to find her. But while talking about Lauren, he started referring to her in the past tense, even though at that point, no one yet knew for sure she was dead. Yeah, Lauren was my neighbor. We're just trying to find out where she is at this point. I mean, no one has seen her since Saturday. I mean, the last time anyone heard from her was an email that she sent out, and no one's heard from her since. Did you see her hang out with anyone at the time? Anything like that? I mean, no. No one has seen her since Saturday. I haven't seen anything. I mean, you always hear noise outside, but it's just people walking by pretty much. And she just recently graduated from Mercer? Yeah, she and I, we were both JD students. We graduated back in May. What kind of person was she? I mean, what did you see? I mean, she's as nice as can be. I mean, very personable, very much a people person. Do you know anybody any enemies you might have had? Somebody that might want to hurt her? No, I mean, we all know where she is. I mean, the only thing we can think is that maybe she went out running and someone snatched her. Because, I mean, we went over. One of her friends had a key. We went inside and tried to see if there was anything amiss. But, I mean, she had a door jamb that was sitting right by it. So there was no sign that anyone broke in. I mean, the door was locked when everyone got here. We just don't know where she is. When the reporters mentioned that police might have found a body near the dumpsters, Stephen went completely silent. His face changed instantly. He froze, staring off into space, not saying a word. The journalists kept talking, asking if he was okay, and after a few seconds, Stephen quietly said he needed to sit down. What about in the parking lot area? I know they've been doing a lot of. I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there. Body. Had you seen anything there? Had you seen anything there? I mean, we don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean? They took out a body there earlier. We don't know if it's the same person or not. That's why we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there. Are you okay, sir? I think I need to sit down. Eventually, he resumed the interview, trying to answer questions again, though now he was acting very dramatic. I don't know anyone that would want to hurt her. She was as nice a person as there is. What's going on in your mind right now? What are you thinking? Why would anyone do this? She didn't hear anything? No. She didn't see anybody? I just heard something. Maybe I could have helped. Okay. Don't worry. Do you want to sit down for a second? And after the reporters left, Stephen just sat there for a long time, completely still, staring off into the distance. A few hours later, Stephen suddenly changed his mind and told police they could search his apartment after all. The moment detectives stepped inside, they were hit with what looked like organized chaos. Large piles of canned food, energy drinks, random junk, and a lot of weapons. But what really caught their attention came next. Hidden among his things were 2 keys, a master key that could open any door in the complex, and another one, a duplicate that fit Lauren's apartment specifically. When they confronted him, Stephen admitted that he'd broken into several neighboring units when the tenants weren't home, and in one case, he'd stolen a box of condoms. Strangely, he added that he was a virgin, but he never explained why he took them in the first place. Detectives decided to use that confession to their advantage. They arrested him for burglary and took him down to the station for questioning. Meanwhile, officers continued searching his apartment. And that's when they found an empty hacksaw package. Considering the killer had dismembered the victim, this discovery sent an immediate chill through the room. But the deeper they looked, the worse it got. Police found 2 USB drives filled with illegal material involving minors, along with a pair of women's underwear hidden in the closet. When investigators checked his computer, they discovered that Stephen had been visiting Lauren's social media pages obsessively. At the same time, his browser history showed he'd been consuming violent and disturbing adult content, sometimes while looking at Lauren's photos. And even that wasn't the end of it. Detectives found links to online forums where Stephen had been writing graphic stories about murdering and torturing women. And one of the final searches in his browser history was the trash collection schedule for their city. All of this convinced detectives beyond any doubt that Stephen was involved in Lauren's murder. To them, it was clear that he'd been obsessed with her. And since he had a key to her apartment, plus Lauren's repeated complaints about things being moved around while she was gone, the pictures started to come together. Stephen had been sneaking into her home all along. Still, there was one major problem. They didn't yet have any solid evidence directly linking him to the crime. During questioning, detectives tried everything they could to get a confession, but Stephen's behavior was pretty weird. For hours, he sat motionless, answering in a barely audible voice, repeating only 3 phrases: yes, no, and I don't know. And you've lived next to Lauren for a long time? Yes. Have you ever seen her with that dress on? No. You have no idea where she's at? No. Just tell me what happened, brother. I don't know. The detectives grew increasingly frustrated. They pressured him, even tried the classic bluff, claiming they'd found his DNA at the crime scene and that the only thing that could help him now was to confess. But Stephen, who'd studied law himself, didn't fall for it. He stayed completely calm, emotionless, and silent. You know what's crazy? I was talking to people that he works with and everything. They talk about how he always expresses himself. No, but he don't know it. He's very talkative. Stephen, they say you're so talkative. Buddy, that you're always so friendly. You stop in and say hello, and you talk. Why is it that you're acting so short with us tonight? If you have all this character and personality about you, why is it that everything that we get from you is yes, no, or I don't know? Well, you sure were talking to the media tonight, weren't you? They asked what happened. Yeah, that's what we're asking you. What happened? What did you tell them? I told them what I knew. That you didn't know. Do you realize how you're talking right now? Does it not feel weird to you? No. Would you say that this is how you talk all the time? I don't understand. You're just not expressing yourself at all. Everything that's with you is yes. No, I don't remember. I don't understand. You can't help me out with anything. There's nothing you can tell me to help me about this beautiful girl right here. Stephen, that was your friend. Nothing. You gonna let things go down like this? I don't know what you want. I want the truth, Stephen. We just wanted to give you an opportunity to tell it. So you didn't look like a monster at the end. Because you know what? I don't believe that you're a monster, Stephen. I believe that you're a good guy. You've been pinked on. Girls didn't show you the respect that you deserved. You did something stupid. And I believe you feel bad about it. And that's why you're all freaked out right now. But I'm giving you the opportunity to get right. I'm giving you an opportunity to show everybody you're not a monster. That you feel bad about what happened. Your hair is there, man. Your hair is there. We got your hair with the body. How's that, Stephen? I don't know. Yes, you do know. Yes, you do know, Stephen. That's right, buddy. See that? Look at it. See how easy it happens. And it happened to you. Why, Stephen? I don't understand. Oh, you understand? You understand exactly what I'm saying. See this stuff right here? Your hair? Yeah, it fell out of your head when you was moving the body, Stephen. That's right. You remember moving the body? Yeah. Yes, you do, Stephen. Eventually, the detectives left him alone in the interrogation room, and Stephen just sat there for a long time, perfectly still, staring blankly at the wall. Just stay right here. Okay? Okay. I appreciate all your cooperation tonight. Okay? Okay. Officers also asked him to remove his shirt so they could check for any recent injuries. That's when they noticed several scratches across his torso, marks that looked like they'd been made by fingernails. When asked about them, Stephen simply said he had no idea where they came from. Maybe, he suggested, he'd scratched himself in his sleep. Police eventually realized there was no way they'd get a confession out of Stephen, so they shifted their focus to finding hard evidence. They began combing through every inch of the apartment complex, and soon they caught a break. In a maintenance room, officers discovered a hacksaw that perfectly matched the packaging found in Stephen's apartment. It had clearly been scrubbed clean, but forensic experts still managed to find tiny fragments of human tissue on the blade, and DNA tests confirmed they belonged to Lauren. From there, detectives traced the purchase of that same saw back to a local hardware store and pulled the surveillance footage from that day. On the video, clear as day, was Stephen McDaniel buying the saw himself. Investigators also interviewed the maintenance worker who had access to that room, but the man provided a solid alibi for the night of the murder. That left only one person who could have opened the door. Stephen, the man with a master key. Detectives then started digging deeper into his background and talking to people who knew him. Everyone described Stephen as quiet, withdrawn, and just strange, but also very intelligent. Several classmates mentioned that when he met new people, he would ask them two unsettling questions. What would you do in a zombie apocalypse? And how would you commit the perfect murder? Because of his odd behavior, he didn't really have any friends, and most classmates avoided him outside of school. The only person who ever tried to be kind to him was actually Lauren. She found him a bit unusual, but still treated him with respect and kindness. Over the 3 years they lived next door, Stephen had asked her out several times, but Lauren had always politely turned him down. Outside of school, he barely had a life. He spent nearly all of his time at home, with his curtains constantly drawn and no one ever coming or going. In the weeks following Stephen's arrest, police kept searching for more evidence, but every lead came up empty. They also continued combing through nearby areas, hoping to find the rest of Lauren's remains. But that search ended in failure too. The only thing detectives managed to uncover was a lab report confirming that the pair of women's underwear found in Stephen's apartment belonged to Lauren. But soon after, investigators discovered something that sent chills even down the spines of seasoned detectives. On one of the memory cards seized from Stephen's apartment, they found a video, recorded just hours before Lauren's death. Using a long wooden stick, Stephen had taped a small camera to the end of it and lifted it up to Lauren's window, secretly filming the inside of her apartment. That footage erased any lingering doubt about his guilt, and a few weeks later, formal charges were filed, not only for Lauren's murder, but also for 30 counts of possession of illegal material involving minors. As the case moved toward trial, Stephen pleaded not guilty, while prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty. His defense attorney, a former professor who had actually taught both Lauren and Stephen, claimed that police might have framed his client, planting evidence in the apartment to make him look guilty. He also argued against the death penalty, pointing out that Lauren herself had been publicly opposed to it. But in the end, the judge sided with the prosecution. The road to trial dragged on for years. The prosecution knew that with the evidence they had, Stephen still stood a real chance of walking free, because to pursue the death penalty, they needed absolute, irrefutable proof. And the truth was, most of what they had was circumstantial, so a skilled defense attorney could easily plant doubt in the minds of the jury. After some consideration, the prosecution made a calculated decision. They offered Stephen a plea deal. If he confessed in full detail and pled guilty to the murder, the state would drop all the charges related to illegal materials, and more importantly, take the death penalty off the table. In 2014, 3 years after Lauren's death, Stephen finally agreed. According to his confession, around 4:30 in the morning, he dressed entirely in black from head to toe, mask and gloves included. Using the spare key, he quietly unlocked Lauren's door and slipped inside, managing to bypass the door brace she used for extra security. Stephen crept into her bedroom and stood there for a while, just watching as she slept. Then, at some point, the floor creaked beneath him. Lauren woke up, startled, and when she saw a masked figure in her room, she told him to get out. That's when he jumped at her and started choking her while she fought back. At some point, Lauren managed to tear off his mask, and when she did, she saw it was Stephen. Lauren begged him to stop, but he didn't. The struggle went on for nearly 15 minutes before he finally realized she wasn't breathing anymore. Stephen then carried her body into the bathroom and left it there overnight. The next evening, he returned with tools, including a hacksaw, and spent several hours dismembering the body. He placed the remains into trash bags and scattered them across multiple dumpsters near the university. As for the torso, he dumped it in the bin beside their apartment complex, assuming the garbage truck would pick it up soon. Afterward, he cut up his mask, gloves, and shirt into small pieces and flushed them down the toilet. Stephen claimed he didn't really know why he killed Lauren. According to him, he'd suffered some kind of mental blackout and genuinely believed she was still alive afterward, which he said was why he took part in the search for her. But prosecutors didn't buy that story for a second. In their view, Stephen had been obsessed with Lauren for a long time. His social media history, the video he filmed through her window, and his disturbing online activity all pointed to someone consumed by dark fantasies about violence and control. The forums he frequented and the content he viewed made it clear. He was fascinated by inflicting pain on women. And with Lauren just days away from moving out of the apartment complex, prosecutors believed he acted out of desperation. He couldn't stand the thought of losing sight of her forever. Either way, his confession sealed his fate. Stephen McDaniel was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole in 2041. 4 years later, he filed an appeal, and this time, he decided to represent himself. He argued that police had violated his rights from the very beginning, yelling at him during interrogation, refusing to let him use the bathroom without permission, and even denying him medical help during what he claimed was a seizure, unless he allowed them to search his apartment. He also accused his former attorney of failing to defend him properly. The lawyer, in turn, responded that Stephen had been given a remarkably good deal, life with a chance of parole instead of a death sentence, and that no attorney could have done better under the circumstances. Despite his efforts, the appeal was denied. In 2022, Stephen filed yet another one, but that too was rejected. It's worth mentioning that some of his relatives still insist he was framed. His father even created a fundraising page to hire a new lawyer for him. But no one donated a single dollar, and the page was quickly taken down. So, Stephen remains behind bars to this day, still trying to overturn his conviction. But according to most legal experts, the odds are stacked against him, and it's almost certain he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments section. Today's case takes us to Colorado in 2020, but the details, unfortunately, harken back to a brutal murder that took place in California 5 decades earlier. The details surrounding this case are far less well known, yet some are chillingly similar and equally strange. Let's take a look. On Friday, July 3rd, just before 9:30 p.m., a call was placed to Denver 911 from a resident of an apartment building on North Oneida Street. The caller explained that a man had knocked on their door moments earlier, stating that they arrived at the unit upstairs to find their friend, who lived there, dead. "I went to Sonic, and then I went to my house, which is about Mount 6.7. And I was there the whole time until I just came back here. Walked inside. The back door was open. I walked inside, and I was like, no, no, no. And I walked in and I found you on the bedroom." 40-year-old Ariana Woke was found on her bedroom floor near the closet. The single mother of a young son was pronounced dead by paramedics upon their arrival. She had suffered nearly 20 stab wounds, many to her back and neck. The friend who had discovered Ariana told officers on scene that she had been struggling recently with alcohol addiction. They were staying at the apartment temporarily to assist her sobriety. Ariana's son was with other family on the night of her death. That day, she had plans to attend a barbecue with her boyfriend. Earlier today, before I left, she was like, "Hey, you want to go with us to the park?" And I was like, "No, I need to go home. I haven't been able to change or do anything in 2 days." So I said, "I'm going." And she was supposed to be going to City Park to barbecue with her boyfriend. That's the last thing that I know. Officers then spoke with the neighbor who called 911. That individual had seen Ariana earlier in the day, and she had not been alone. The neighbor described the man that she saw with Ariana that night. "So what time today did you see him? Was it light outside? Dark outside?" "Yeah, I was closing my blinds about 4 to 9, and I saw him. I looked at the back window, and he was there, and he went around the back part. He came in through the gate, went into the gate and around to the end." "What did he look like? White guy, black guy, Hispanic guy, black, white, white. Okay." The downstairs neighbor told the officer on scene that the unknown man knocked on her door around 8:45 p.m. He wanted to speak with her about what he said was Ariana's strange behavior. "He came downstairs twice and he asked me, 'Can I come in and talk to you about her?' I said, 'No, stand outside, talk to the door.' And he says, 'Well, I don't like the way she's acting. She's acting weird and everything. He thinks she's going to do something to herself because she wasn't. You know, acting strange. Right?' He said, 'Okay.' He went back upstairs. But he said he was leaving. Okay. But like I said, a half an hour later, I guess I saw him in the back. But the dog was out there. So that was at 8:45. You saw him?" "Yeah, about 4 to 9. So about 9. After stating that Ariana was a threat to herself, the man said he was leaving, except he didn't. The neighbor saw him in the backyard just a half an hour later, and he was shirtless. It was only 15 minutes after that. Ariana's friend found her on the bedroom floor. Ariana had lived on Oneida Street alone for only a short time. Her on-again, off-again boyfriend had moved out only a few months prior to her death. Described by friends as a sweet person and a loving mother, she was known for her generous spirit, her silliness, and positive personality. Ariana was born on Easy Street in Penn Valley, California, into a family that had experienced tragedy years before. In August 1969, her mother, Susan LeBurge, had discovered her own mother, Rosemary, and stepfather, Lino LaBianca, brutally murdered in their Los Angeles home, victims of Charles Manson and his followers. The LaBianca murders took place the night following the infamous killing of actress Sharon Tate and 4 of her companions. Manson was reportedly unhappy with how the Tate murders had gone down. Too much panic, insufficient weapons. So, the next night, he took the 4 murderers from the night before, as well as 2 more followers in search of another house to break into, and more people to murder. For reasons that are debated, he chose the home of Lino LaBianca, who was a wealthy grocery store executive. He and wife Rosemary, Ariana's grandmother, were brutally murdered. Rosemary was found in the living room, Lino in the bedroom. Each had been stabbed dozens of times. Ariana was born in 1979, 10 years after the killings. At 40 years old, she was just 2 years older than her grandmother had been when she too was stabbed to death in her home. Shortly after officers secured the scene and began interviewing witnesses, detectives arrived. They found what appeared to be a trail of blood beginning in the bedroom through the living room on the floor and leading into the kitchen. There was a folding knife with blood on it in the kitchen sink, as well as residue on the faucet. The obvious suspect was Ariana's sometimes boyfriend, a man named Patrick. Friends reported that she was meant to meet with him that day. There was also a history of domestic violence in their relationship. In fact, Patrick was on pretrial release from an incident that took place between the 2 of them in May of that year. Since then, he had been living out of his car. Patrick sat down with detectives the day following the murder. "Were you anywhere near the 09 Street address at all yesterday?" "Closest I was to Walgreens." "Okay. Yeah. What time was that?" 2, 3 o'clock. "Like right after that barbecue." "Did you have any contact with Ariana yesterday in person?" "Yeah, I did." "At the Walgreens?" "Yeah. At the Walgreens or another business nearby?" "Walgreens." "Okay. Can you do me a favor real quick? Can you put your hands out like that for me? And then can you turn your hands over?" Patrick told the detective that he spoke with Ariana briefly at a Walgreens the afternoon before she died. She seemed to have been drinking, he said, and was too inebriated to continue with their plans, so he left. He also introduced another line of inquiry. Patrick stated that Ariana was quick to make new friends. He claimed that she had a habit of inviting strangers back to her apartment. Often, these were individuals without a home of their own. According to Patrick, she befriended random people on the street. The thing with Ariana is if she gets intoxicated, she brings home people. Okay, vagrants. I mean, I used to be homeless, and so she would bring home people. And complete strangers and just put trust in them. What do you mean by that? Like, here's my debit card. Go to the store. No thought process when drinking about people taking advantage or doing stuff like that. So how often is she bringing people to the house? Frequently. Like daily. Okay. No, it was just like friendly. Like I'm trying to feed them, help them out type of. Okay. When Patrick encountered Ariana at the Walgreens, he said that she was with an unknown young man. They had just met on the street while on her way to the store only minutes before. Was she with anyone? She was intoxicated and she was with like a younger 20-year-old kid. What do you look like? Like the kind of flamboyant, dark hair. White, black, Hispanic. Oh, white. You're saying flamboyant. Tell me what you mean. Like he just had like a gay or stylish haircut. I'm trying to not be derogatory. You're saying younger. Like how old? 20, she said. 20? She was like, oh, I met this gay 20-year-old. Blah, 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 blah. She was like, do you know what he was wearing? Might have had a red shirt. But I mean, I just briefly saw him. Did she introduce him? She did. But I don't remember his name. She met him supposedly walking from Oneida to Walgreens. While detectives spoke with Patrick, they also verified his alibi. One condition of his pretrial release was an ankle monitor. Pretrial services tracked Patrick's GPS from that device on the day of the murder and found that he was not at Ariana's address at any time. He was eliminated as a suspect in her murder. As strange as it seemed, He was not the only one to tell detectives that Ariana had a habit of inviting vagrants to her home. Returning to the neighbors in her building, they spoke with the son of one tenant who was frequently visiting the downstairs apartment. He not only confirmed that seeing Ariana with new people regularly was common, but he also described seeing a man that matched the description provided by Patrick. New faces all the time. That lives upstairs? She had new people every time. I mean, after Patrick left, boyfriend or whatever, after he left, she had so many people. Oh man, it's different guys every day. Did you see the neighbor at the house? Yes. She was coming from the liquor store, I guess. Okay. And she had a dog walking with a dog. Okay. Was she with anyone else at that time? No. Did you hear somebody else or see somebody else? I've seen this guy that I've never seen before. My mom said she's seen him before. Okay. What do you look like? It was a Mexican guy with a box foot. I seen them real good when, she fell down that stairs down there in the back door. I mean, her foot was way up on the top. I thought he had pushed her. Her foot was, from the top. It was her hand on the top. And I said, "Oh, did you push? Did you just push her?" And he said, "No." And she said, "No, he's gay." No, that's not it. Surveillance video from a camera on East Colfax Avenue and North Monaco Street at 5:15 p.m. on July 3rd showed Ariana walking eastbound on the street in the company of a man with black hair. Her friend's small dog walked with them. The man was wearing all black with bright red shoes. They were captured crossing the street and continuing in the direction of Ariana's apartment on Oneida. On Colfax Street, the two had entered a store that was equipped with internal security cameras. Still images from these cameras showed the man in black carrying a clear plastic Starbucks cup filled with a pink drink. He also had a distinctive tattoo on his left forearm. It was the Starbucks cup that detectives narrowed in on. One similar to it had been discarded on the front yard of Ariana's building and spotted by officers. That cup was later recovered from the lawn and sent for testing. Fingerprints pulled from the plastic returned a match. Jose Sandoval Romero. He was 24 years old with a matching build to the man in the surveillance. He had short, dark brown hair and a red tattoo on his arm, which appeared to match the one captured on camera. On July 7th, Jose was brought into the station for questioning. Unlike Patrick, who had no visible cuts or scratches on his hands or arms, Jose had two separate, partially healed cuts to his right hand. It was a telltale sign, consistent with a knife slipping as he made stabbing motions. These cuts were also thought to be the cause of the blood droplets observed on the living room and kitchen floors at the murder scene. Complaining of light sensitivity, Jose wore his sunglasses for most of the interview. He began by explaining how he had encountered Ariana that afternoon while she was arguing with Patrick. And then all of a sudden, this lady and this guy were fighting outside of a Walgreens. And the lady started coming up to me asking me, like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Do I know you? Is that your boyfriend right there? Is he going to try to beat me up if I talk to you?" The boyfriend got out the car and, tried to talk to her. But she said that he had, like, a restraining order on her or something, or an ankle bracelet. And I was like, "You don't need to cry, it's okay." She just kept telling me that she wanted to put some type of drug in me, because she says that she does these type of drugs to herself. She says she puts frog poison in her body. And she says that she wanted me to go with her and do the same thing. And I told her, "No, I don't know nothing about that stuff. The Walgreens you're talking about is the one that's next to Frosted Leaf. Is that the Walgreens you're talking about?" "Yeah." "Okay. So you say you run into this lady and this guy. So they're arguing. So he ends up leaving. And then you guys." Jose said that after Patrick left, he and Ariana purchased food for a man they encountered in the alleyway. After that, he was compelled to help her home because she did not appear capable of getting there on her own. He continued to insist that he did not want to go with her, that her strange references to feeding him frog poison frightened him. From there, she kept stumbling on the ground, and she had a dog and a bunch of stuff carrying her. She was like, "I cannot make a home by myself. Please, you need to come with me." And I was like, "Miss, I really don't want to hang out with you. There's something wrong with you." You have so much stuff, and for some reason, you just keep stumbling on the ground. Jose did agree to help Ariana home. Once inside, he made her a cup of tea. He claimed to be unaware that she was intoxicated, primarily because he did not see her actually consume any alcohol. He did, however, know that something was not quite right. Let me make you some tea. Let me make you some coffee. Let me do anything to make you feel better. And I started making her coffee, tea. And she would just keep crying. And she would just keep trying to fight with me. And at some point, she just started, actually trying to fight with me. Then after that, I just kind of lost it. And, in there, it's kind of just self-said. The portion of the story that Jose believed was self-explanatory was that he proceeded to stab Ariana multiple times in the back. They had met only hours earlier. At first, the 24-year-old claimed that he had tried to leave. He went to the downstairs neighbor and told her that Ariana was acting strangely. He claimed this was in order to help her so he could leave knowing that the neighbor would check in on her later. And I went downstairs, told them they were, "Hey, this lady's crazy. I gotta go. There's something wrong with her. In a couple hours. Can you come and check up on her? I'm trying to go, I'm not trying to comfort this girl. I was like, I'm trying to go, can you please go and check up on her?" She's like, "You see, that's the thing about her is we're worried and we're scared of her and we don't know if we," she's like, "I'll just call the cops because I'm not going to be dealing with her, okay, that's not, I'm too old and this and that," and I'm like, "Okay, Miss Isle." But instead of leaving, he went back to the apartment. Then he said that Ariana began messing with his head. I don't know how she did it. She played me. She pretty much, I don't know why she fucking told me to go with her. This lady literally picked me up from the street and she made me feel bad. And every time I would leave her, she would stumble on the ground and make me feel bad. And every time I said, "No, I gotta go." And then she would stumble on the ground and cry. And she would just stumble on the ground and cry. And I don't know. She just played me. She played me. But I pretty much played myself by listening to her. I'm telling you, she drugged me. She drugged me and she told me. Jose told detectives a confusing cocktail of motives for the killing. His overarching assertion was that Ariana convinced him to kill her. He claimed they came to an agreement about it and that in a matter of only a few hours, he came to believe it was the only way to help her. But he played with the idea that he was defending himself by claiming that she threatened him, that her boyfriend was on his way to the apartment with another man and they planned to kill him. Finally, he asserted that Ariana had abruptly turned violent, at one point coming at him with the. He managed to fight her off, though the attack made him angry. So he used the knife to stab Ariana. And the only way to help her was apparently her crazy way. To help kill her? Yeah. So when she's talking to you about that, you're telling me, and again, correct me if I'm not understanding you, what you're saying is you thought the only way to help her was to kill her. She was going to have her boyfriend show up, and then she called her boyfriend, and I don't know what they talked about, but she pretty much told me that, we were going to die that day. Okay. She talked me into it, and I listened. That's it. Why didn't you call 911? Because she told me her boyfriend and her gay boyfriend's friend was going to come and kill me. They had this plan. So instead you killed her? She wanted to kill me. So when you stabbed her, is it because you were trying to help her or because you were mad? It was both. That's the only way you can get mixed up. Jose approached Ariana when she entered her bedroom and was walking towards her closet. He claimed he stabbed her twice. So you said when she walks into the bedroom, she's walking to her closet. Is that the first time you stab her? So she's facing away from you? She's walking to the. Yeah, after she pretty much took the knife out and pretty much tried to stab me and stumbled, I took it away. And then she walks into the bedroom towards the closet. Yes. You follow her into the bedroom. And then that's the first time you stab her? Amham. So she's facing her closet and you're behind her. She was running for something. Yes. After the murder, Jose fled the scene and disposed of evidence. He stripped off all of his clothing as he left the apartment and threw them in a nearby dumpster along with his shoes. He spent the next several days at his mother's house watching the door, waiting to see if law enforcement would find him. If you have enough thought to get rid of your bloody clothes because you're I got blood all over my clothes because I just stabbed this woman to death. That I think you understood what you were doing. We both understood what we were doing. And do me a favor. Take those glasses off. I don't think you're giving us the whole truth. I think you're trying to spin it a little about this. Well, she convinced me. She made me. How old are you? 24 years old, right? Yes. And who can make you do anything? Nobody. Right. So nobody made you stab her. Nobody made me stab her. You decided to stab her. While she talked me into it. You guys will never believe it because how could you guys believe it? Because I can't get talked into killing somebody. No. People can't get talked into killing people. You were trying to paint this in a picture that makes it most acceptable. No. I'm not. What happened here is you stabbed this poor drunk lady about 20 times while she was down on her bedroom floor. It's one of the worst stabbings I've seen in my 23 years of law enforcement. And then you're smart enough to get out of there, destroy the evidence, evade our efforts to locate you, and come down to the Springs. Following his confession, Jose Sandoval Romero pleaded guilty to the murder. In early 2023, he was sentenced to 48 years in prison. His earliest date of release is in July 2055. Ariana's mother, Susan, was 72 years old when her daughter was murdered. She told media outlets at the time that she was grieving the loss of her daughter and was too upset to comment. A GoFundMe page was created by Ariana's sister, Rummy, to help raise money to bring her body back to California. She also set up a separate fundraiser to help create a trust fund for Ariana's young son. And that was the tragic case of Ariana Woke. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments section and don't forget to press the like button if you enjoyed my video. Callum Thorne and Evelyn Russo were the epitome of young love. Both 20 years old, they seemed destined for each other from the moment they met. Callum, with his boyish charm and ambitious spirit, had just started his own landscaping business. His rugged good looks and kind heart made him popular among the locals, but he had eyes for only one person. Evelyn, on the other hand, was a vision of grace and beauty. With flowing hair and piercing eyes, she turned heads wherever she went. A talented artist, she dreamed of opening her own gallery one day. Her creativity and passion for life were infectious, drawing people to her like moths to a flame. Their paths crossed on a crisp autumn evening at the annual Millbrook Harvest Festival. Callum was volunteering at the pumpkin carving station, his strong hands skillfully guiding children as they created their masterpieces. Evelyn, manning the face-painting booth, couldn't help but notice the gentle giant with the infectious laugh. As fate would have it, they found themselves cleaning up side by side as the festival wound down. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by shy glances and nervous laughter. By the end of the night, they had exchanged numbers and made plans to meet for coffee the following week. From that moment on, Callum and Evelyn were inseparable. Their relationship blossomed at a dizzying pace, fueled by the intensity of young love and the excitement of finding a kindred spirit. They spent their days exploring the hidden gems of Millbrook, from secluded hiking trails to quaint cafes tucked away in corners of the town. Evenings were filled with long conversations about their hopes and dreams. Callum spoke passionately about expanding his business, while Evelyn shared her sketches and paintings, her eyes lighting up as she described the emotions behind each piece. They supported each other's ambitions wholeheartedly, each believing they had found their perfect match. Their families and friends marveled at the strength of their connection. It was as if they had known each other for years rather than months. Evelyn's parents, Thomas and Maria Russo, welcomed Callum with open arms, seeing in him the son they never had. Callum's widowed mother, Fiona Thorne, was equally enamored with Evelyn, grateful that her son had found someone who brought such joy to his life. As winter turned to spring, their love only grew stronger. They began making plans for the future, talking about where they might live, how many children they wanted, and the adventures they would embark on together. It seemed that nothing could dampen their enthusiasm for the life they were building. On a warm evening in May, just 6 months after they had met, Callum got down on one knee in the very spot where they had first talked at the Harvest Festival. With tears in his eyes, he asked Evelyn to be his wife. Without hesitation, she said yes, sealing their commitment with a kiss that held the promise of forever. Little did they know that their fairy tale was about to take a dark turn, one that would test the very foundations of their love and trust in ways they could never have imagined. The news of Callum and Evelyn's engagement spread through Millbrook like wildfire. The town buzzed with excitement, eager to celebrate the union of two of its most beloved young residents. The couple wasted no time in diving headfirst into wedding planning, their enthusiasm palpable as they discussed every detail of their special day. Evelyn threw herself into the preparations with gusto. She spent hours poring over bridal magazines, creating mood boards, and visiting venues. Her artistic eye came in handy as she meticulously coordinated color schemes and floral arrangements. Callum, while less interested in the finer details, was happy to support Evelyn's vision, offering input when asked and ensuring that his bride-to-be had everything she desired. As the weeks passed, however, subtle changes began to creep into their relationship. Evelyn, once so open and affectionate, started to become distant and preoccupied. She would spend long hours on her phone, quickly locking the screen whenever Callum entered the room. Her explanations of wedding-related calls and messages rang hollow, leaving Callum with a nagging sense of unease. Their once frequent date nights became increasingly rare, with Evelyn citing wedding stress and the need to finalize details as reasons for canceling plans. When they did spend time together, she seemed distracted, her mind clearly elsewhere. Callum tried to brush off his concerns, attributing her behavior to pre-wedding jitters and the pressure of planning such a significant event. Friends and family noticed the shift as well. Evelyn's best friend Zoe remarked on how Evelyn no longer gushed about Callum the way she used to. Callum's mother Fiona sensed a tension between the couple that hadn't been there before. She gently probed her son, asking if everything was all right. But Callum brushed off her concerns with a forced smile and reassurances that all was well. As the wedding day drew nearer, Callum's doubts grew stronger. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Late one night, as Evelyn slept soundly beside him, he found himself staring at the ceiling, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. He loved Evelyn with all his heart, but a voice in the back of his mind whispered that perhaps she no longer felt the same way. Little did Callum know that his instincts were right on the mark. The woman lying next to him, the one he had chosen to spend his life with, was harboring a secret that would soon shatter their world and set in motion a chain of events that would end in tragedy. As Callum grappled with his growing doubts, a new figure entered the scene, one who would play a pivotal role in the unfolding drama. Garrett Blackwood, a renowned wedding photographer, came highly recommended by several of Millbrook's elite families. At 50 years old, Garrett exuded a magnetic charm that belied his age. His salt-and-pepper hair and piercing eyes gave him a distinguished appearance, while his quick wit and smooth demeanor made him instantly likable. Garrett had made a name for himself, capturing the most intimate moments of couples' special days. His portfolio was impressive, featuring stunning shots that seemed to capture not just images, but emotions. When Evelyn stumbled upon his work online, she was immediately captivated. She convinced Callum that Garrett was the only choice for their wedding photographer, insisting that his artistic vision aligned perfectly with her own. Their first meeting with Garrett took place at a trendy cafe in downtown Millbrook. From the moment he walked in, his presence commanded attention. He greeted the couple with a warm smile and a firm handshake, his eyes lingering on Evelyn a fraction longer than necessary. As they discussed the wedding plans, Garrett's focus seemed to be primarily on the bride-to-be, hanging on her every word and offering enthusiastic praise for her ideas. Callum, initially impressed by Garrett's portfolio and professionalism, found himself feeling increasingly uncomfortable as the meeting progressed. He couldn't quite put his finger on why, but something about the way Garrett interacted with Evelyn set him on edge. He brushed it off as artistic camaraderie, trying to convince himself that he was reading too much into innocent interactions. As they left the cafe, Evelyn couldn't stop talking about how perfect Garrett was for their wedding. She gushed about his vision, his talent, and how lucky they were to have secured his services. Callum nodded along, pushing down the twinge of jealousy that threatened to surface. In the weeks that followed, Garrett became a frequent presence in their lives. He insisted on multiple meetings to discuss shot lists, lighting, and locations. Each time, Evelyn seemed to grow more animated and excited about the photography aspect of the wedding. She began to suggest additional photo sessions, including an engagement shoot and a boudoir session as a surprise for Callum. Garrett's charm extended beyond the couple. At a pre-wedding dinner with both families, he regaled everyone with tales of his travels and the celebrities he had photographed. Evelyn's parents were particularly taken with him, praising his sophistication and worldliness. Even Callum's mother, Fiona, found herself warming to Garrett's charismatic personality. As the wedding day approached, Garrett's influence on the proceedings grew. He suggested changes to the venue layout to optimize lighting, advised on the timing of events to capture the best moments, and even offered input on Evelyn's choice of dress. With each suggestion, Evelyn became more enthralled, while Callum felt increasingly sidelined in his own wedding plans. Little did anyone know that behind Garrett's professional facade and charming smile lurked a man with his own agenda, one that would soon threaten to destroy not just a wedding, but lives. The spark that ignited the affair between Evelyn and Garrett was as unexpected as it was intense. It happened during a routine meeting to discuss the wedding photo locations. Callum, tied up with an emergency at work, couldn't make it, leaving Evelyn to meet Garrett alone at a picturesque spot by Millbrook Lake. As they walked along the shore, scouting for the perfect backdrop, their conversation drifted from wedding plans to more personal topics. Garrett, with his worldly experience and smooth talking, captivated Evelyn. He spoke of his travels, the art he had seen, and the life he had lived, all things that resonated deeply with Evelyn's artistic soul, and her dreams of a life beyond Millbrook. In a moment of vulnerability, Evelyn confessed her fears about settling down so young, her doubts about whether she was truly ready for marriage. Garrett listened intently, offering understanding and empathy. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the lake, Garrett gently tucked a strand of hair behind Evelyn's ear. The touch, innocent as it seemed, sent a jolt of electricity through both of them. Their eyes met, and in that instant, a line was crossed. The kiss that followed was passionate and forbidden, awakening feelings in Evelyn that she had never experienced before. When they finally broke apart, breathless and guilty, they knew that everything had changed. The affair escalated quickly from there. Evelyn and Garrett began meeting in secret, using the pretense of wedding preparations to steal moments alone. They would rendezvous at out-of-town cafes, secluded spots in the nearby forest, and even in Garrett's studio under the guise of planning the boudoir shoot. Each encounter left Evelyn feeling more alive and conflicted. The passion she felt with Garrett was intoxicating, unlike anything she had experienced with Callum. Garrett made her feel sophisticated, understood, and desired in a way that thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. For Garrett, Evelyn represented a chance to recapture his youth. Her beauty, innocence, and enthusiasm reminded him of the women he had loved and lost in his younger days. He knew the affair was wrong, that he was potentially destroying a young couple's future. But he couldn't bring himself to end it. As the affair deepened, Evelyn found herself pulling away from Callum. She made excuses to avoid intimacy, claiming stress and exhaustion from wedding planning. When they were together, her mind was often elsewhere, replaying moments with Garrett or planning their next clandestine meeting. Callum, sensing the growing distance between them, tried desperately to reconnect. He planned surprise dates, wrote her love notes, and even suggested they take a break from wedding planning to focus on their relationship. But Evelyn, consumed by her secret passion, found herself unable to reciprocate his efforts fully. The guilt ate away at Evelyn. There were moments when she considered confessing everything to Callum, moments when she resolved to end things with Garrett. But each time she saw Garrett, all her resolve crumbled. The thrill of their forbidden romance was too strong to resist. As the wedding day drew nearer, the stakes grew higher. Evelyn knew she had to make a decision, but found herself paralyzed by indecision. She loved Callum, or at least she thought she did. But the passion she felt for Garrett was undeniable. The idea of walking down the aisle to Callum while harboring these secrets filled her with dread. Garrett, for his part, began to pressure Evelyn to call off the wedding. He painted pictures of the life they could have together, traveling the world, pursuing their artistic passions, living a life free from the constraints of small-town expectations. His words were a siren song to Evelyn, tempting her with a future that seemed both thrilling and terrifying. As the days ticked down to the wedding, the tension mounted. Evelyn knew that soon, she would have to face the consequences of her actions. Little did she know that fate, and Callum, had other plans. As Evelyn became more deeply entangled in her affair with Garrett, Callum's initial doubts blossomed into full-fledged suspicion. The changes in Evelyn were too significant to ignore: her emotional distance, her constant preoccupation with her phone, and the way she seemed to light up whenever Garrett's name was mentioned. Determined to understand what was happening, Callum tried to communicate with Evelyn. He initiated conversations about their relationship, asking if she was having second thoughts about the wedding. Evelyn's responses were always the same: reassurances that she was just stressed about the wedding preparations and that everything was fine. But her words rang hollow, lacking the sincerity and warmth that had once characterized their interactions. Unsatisfied with Evelyn's explanations, Callum began to pay closer attention to her behavior. He noticed how she would abruptly end phone calls when he entered the room, the way her eyes would dart nervously when asked about her whereabouts, and the increasing frequency of her meetings with Garrett. One evening, as they lay in bed, Callum reached out to hold Evelyn, only to have her flinch away from his touch. The pain of that reflexive rejection was a turning point for Callum. He knew then that he couldn't ignore his instincts any longer. Reluctantly, Callum began to gather evidence. He felt ashamed of his actions, but the need to know the truth overrode his guilt. He started by checking Evelyn's phone records, noting the frequent calls and texts to a number he didn't recognize. He drove by Garrett's studio at odd hours, his heart sinking when he saw Evelyn's car parked outside, long after their scheduled meeting should have ended. The final piece of evidence came in the form of a forgotten receipt. While doing laundry, Callum found a crumpled paper in Evelyn's jacket pocket, a bill from a hotel in the next town over. The date coincided with a day Evelyn had claimed to be visiting her cousin. As the reality of Evelyn's betrayal sank in, Callum was overwhelmed with a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. The woman he loved, the one he had planned to spend his life with, had been lying to him for months. The future he had envisioned, their home, their family, their shared dreams, seemed to crumble before his eyes. Torn between confronting Evelyn and gathering more evidence, Callum found himself at a crossroads. Should he call off the wedding based on his suspicions? Confront Evelyn and demand the truth? Or wait and see if she would come clean on her own? As the wedding day loomed ever closer, Callum knew he had to make a decision. Little did he know that the choice he would make would set in motion a series of events that would change everyone's lives forever. The night before the wedding, Callum found himself unable to sleep, his mind racing with doubts and suspicions. As dawn broke, he made a fateful decision. He needed to know the truth, once and for all, before he stood at the altar. With shaking hands, he picked up Evelyn's phone from the nightstand. She had always guarded it closely, but in her exhausted state the night before, she had forgotten to set the passcode. Guilt gnawed at him as he opened her messages, but the need for answers overpowered his moral hesitation. What he found shattered his world. Messages between Evelyn and Garrett filled the screen, leaving no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Intimate photos, declarations of love, and plans for their future together after the wedding was called off. It was all there in black and white. Callum's hands trembled as he scrolled through months of deception. He read about secret rendezvous, passionate encounters, and worst of all, Evelyn's doubts about marrying him. In one particularly painful exchange, Evelyn had written to Garrett, "I love you in a way I never loved Callum. You make me feel alive." As the full extent of the betrayal sank in, Callum felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it before he emptied the contents of his stomach. The sound of his retching woke Evelyn, who called out to him in concern. Gathering himself, Callum returned to the bedroom. Evelyn sat up in bed, her face etched with worry as she took in his pale complexion and red-rimmed eyes. She asked what was wrong, reaching out to touch his arm. Callum recoiled from her touch as if burned. In that moment, looking at the woman he had loved and trusted, Callum felt a surge of anger unlike anything he had ever experienced. He held up her phone, his voice low and dangerous as he asked, "How long?" Evelyn's face drained of color as she realized what had happened. She started to speak, to offer explanations and excuses, but Callum cut her off. He didn't want to hear it. The evidence was irrefutable. As the reality of the situation sank in, Evelyn broke down in tears, begging Callum to understand, to forgive her. She claimed she had been confused, that she still loved him, but her words fell on deaf ears. Callum's mind was already racing ahead, thinking of the guests who would soon be arriving, the families who had traveled for the wedding, the life they had planned together, all of it built on a foundation of lies. In that moment, something shifted in Callum. The hurt and betrayal crystallized into a cold, hard resolve. He looked at Evelyn, the woman he had thought would be his wife, and made a decision that would alter the course of all their lives. "The wedding will go on," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, "but not the way you think." With those cryptic words, Callum left the room, leaving a stunned and tearful Evelyn behind. As he closed the door, he knew that the events he was about to set in motion would have consequences beyond anything he could imagine. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil brewing beneath the surface. The Millbrook Community Church, a picturesque white building with a tall steeple, was adorned with flowers and ribbons. Guests began to arrive, dressed in their finest, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. In the groom's room, Callum sat alone, staring at his reflection in the mirror. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his sleepless night, but his face was set in grim determination. His best man, Liam, entered the room, ready with jokes to calm pre-wedding jitters. He faltered when he saw Callum's expression, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Callum brushed off Liam's concerns, insisting that everything was fine. But as he mechanically went through the motions of getting ready, his mind was racing, replaying the shocking discoveries of the previous night and finalizing the plan he had formulated in the dark hours of the morning. Meanwhile, in the bridal suite, Evelyn was a bundle of nerves. Her bridesmaids fluttered around her, adjusting her gown and veil, oblivious to the real reason for her distress. Evelyn's eyes were red and puffy, which everyone attributed to emotional anticipation of the big day. Only she knew the truth, that her tears were born of guilt, fear, and confusion. As she was helped into her wedding dress, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Garrett, wishing her luck and expressing his love. The message only intensified her inner turmoil. She had spent the night torn between her feelings for Garrett and her commitment to Callum, unsure of how to proceed. Outside, guests continued to arrive. Callum's mother, Fiona, greeted people with a strained smile, unable to shake off the feeling that something was amiss with her son. Evelyn's parents, Thomas and Maria, beamed with pride, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break. Garrett arrived, camera in hand, ready to capture the day's events. His professional demeanor was in place, but those who looked closely might have noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes darted around nervously. As the ceremony's start time approached, a palpable tension began to build. The wedding planner, sensing that something was off, tried to coordinate with both bride and groom, but found herself stonewalled at every turn. Guests took their seats in the church, an excited murmur filling the air. The organist began to play, signaling the start of the ceremony. Callum stood at the altar, his face an unreadable mask. The groomsmen exchanged worried glances, picking up on his unusual demeanor. The bridesmaids began their procession down the aisle, each step bringing the moment of truth closer. As the bridal march began to play, all eyes turned to the back of the church, expecting to see a radiant Evelyn. But Evelyn hesitated at the church doors, her father at her side. She felt as if she was standing on the edge of a precipice, knowing that once she took that first step down the aisle, there would be no turning back. Her father, mistaking her reluctance for normal nerves, gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. With a deep breath, Evelyn began her walk down the aisle. Each step felt like an eternity as she approached Callum. Their eyes met, and in that moment, she knew that he knew everything. The look in his eyes, a mixture of hurt, anger, and something else she couldn't quite identify, sent a chill down her spine. As Evelyn reached the altar and took her place beside Callum, the officiant began to speak. But before he could get more than a few words out, Callum raised his hand, silencing him. A hush fell over the church as all eyes turned to the groom, waiting to see what would happen next. The silence in the church was deafening as Callum turned to face the assembled guests. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but carried to every corner of the building. "Friends, family, I want to thank you all for coming today," he began, his words measured and deliberate. "You're here to witness a union, a commitment of love and trust. But before we proceed, there's something you all need to know." Evelyn, standing beside him, felt her heart racing. She reached out to touch Callum's arm to stop him, but he shrugged off her hand without even looking at her. "For the past few months," Callum continued, his voice gaining strength, "the woman I thought I would spend my life with has been living a lie. She's been having an affair." A collective gasp rippled through the church. Evelyn's parents, seated in the front row, looked on in shock and disbelief. Fiona Thorne covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with horror. "And not just with anyone," Callum went on, his gaze sweeping the crowd until it landed on Garrett, who stood frozen near the back of the church, camera forgotten in his hands. "With our wedding photographer, Garrett Blackwood." The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Guests turned in their seats, craning their necks to look at Garrett. Murmurs of shock and disgust filled the air. Evelyn's mother let out a strangled cry, while her father's face turned an alarming shade of red. Evelyn, her face ashen, tried to speak, but no words came out. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked frantically between Callum and the stunned congregation. Garrett, for his part, seemed to shrink under the collective gaze of the wedding guests. He took a step back, as if contemplating fleeing, but found his exit blocked by outraged attendees. "I discovered their betrayal last night," Callum continued, his voice now trembling with awe. With these words, Callum reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of papers, printouts of messages and photos he had discovered on Evelyn's phone. He began to read aloud, his voice carrying clearly through the shocked silence of the church, laying bare every sordid detail of the affair. As Callum's revelations continued, the atmosphere in the church shifted from shock to anger. The day that was meant to celebrate love had turned into a public humiliation, and the tension in the air was palpable, ready to ignite at the slightest spark. As Callum's words hung in the air, the church erupted into chaos. Shouts of anger and disbelief filled the sacred space, drowning out the sobs of Evelyn and the protestations of Garrett. Evelyn's father, Thomas Russo, was the first to act. He lunged towards Garrett, his face contorted with rage. "You bastard," he roared, his fist connecting with Garrett's jaw in a sickening crunch. Garrett stumbled backward, crashing into a row of pews. The violent outburst seemed to break a dam, and suddenly the church was a sea of motion. Guests surged forward, some trying to restrain Thomas, others joining in his attack on Garrett. Women screamed, children cried, and the air was thick with the sound of shattering glass as vases and decorations were knocked over in the melee. Evelyn, still at the altar, collapsed to her knees, her pristine white dress pooling around her. She reached out towards Callum, begging him to stop, to take it all back. But Callum stood impassive, watching the chaos unfold with a detached expression. In the midst of the pandemonium, Garrett managed to break free from his attackers. Blooded and disoriented, he stumbled towards the exit. Evelyn, seeing him trying to escape, suddenly found her feet. In a moment of panic and desperation, she hitched up her dress and ran after him, pushing past shocked guests. Callum, seeing Evelyn flee, felt something snap inside him. The cold detachment that had sustained him through his revelation gave way to a white-hot rage. Without thinking, he took off in pursuit, shouldering past his best man who tried to hold him back. Outside the church, the bright sunlight was jarring after the dimness inside. Garrett had made it to his car and was fumbling with his keys when Evelyn caught up to him. She grabbed his arm, pleading with him, though for what she wasn't sure, to take her with him, to stay and face the consequences. Before Garrett could respond, Callum burst out of the church. The sight of Evelyn with Garrett, still in her wedding dress, was the final straw. With a roar of anguish and fury, Callum charged towards them. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, witnesses would give conflicting accounts. There was a scuffle, shouts, and then the sharp retort of a gunshot that cut through the air like a thunderclap. For a moment, everything went still. Then, Evelyn screamed, a sound of pure horror that would haunt those who heard it for years to come. As she crumpled to the ground, cradling Callum's motionless body, the full tragedy of the day became horrifyingly clear. The gunshot that rang out in front of Millbrook Community Church marked the violent end of what should have been a day of celebration. As the echo faded, it left in its wake a scene of unimaginable tragedy. Callum Thorne lay motionless on the ground, blood seeping through his crisp white shirt, staining it a deep crimson. Evelyn knelt beside him, her wedding dress now smeared with dirt and blood, her anguished cries piercing the air. Garrett Blackwood stood frozen, the smoking gun still in his hand, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Within minutes, the quiet street was filled with the wail of sirens as police and paramedics rushed to the scene. Despite their best efforts, Callum was pronounced dead at the scene, the bullet having struck him directly in the heart. Garrett offered no resistance as he was handcuffed and led away, his eyes vacant, still struggling to comprehend what he had done. Evelyn, in a state of hysteria, had to be sedated before she could be moved from Callum's side. Garrett Blackwood was eventually convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Evelyn Russo, though not charged with any crime, faced the harsh judgment of the community and her own conscience. She eventually left Millbrook, unable to bear the weight of the memories and the accusing glances of her neighbors.